the one thing that I find quite fascinating about the chant that we all just made was that even if you go to other political parties, aside from the ANC, any other political party in South Africa, when they start meetings nowadays, they will also throw their hands up in the air and exclaim, "Amandla!" It's quite uncanny. It's no longer an ANC symbol, it's a South African thing now. It's been expropriated. But also, you know, if you were to travel across the world to European, even American countries, and you were to have a meeting with political animals of those countries, and you were to stand up and say, "Amandla," they would also similarly respond, "Await," because many of them have a memory of this. It's a slogan that has now traveled the world. And the reason it's done that is because the message behind the slogan has traveled the world. The idea that power is ours, it's of the people's, it's in our hands, is an idea that the whole world has embraced. We saw an incredible transformation in this country. Many of us have yet to take stock of just how incredible it is. Last year, I was lucky enough to watch a couple of episodes of a documentary series called Have You Heard from Johannesburg? And it was great because this was a story about apartheid, the anti-apartheid struggle, not from within South Africa, but from outside. And you realize that this anti-apartheid struggle from outside South Africa was possibly the biggest civil action campaign in the history of mankind. Possibly the biggest campaign that countries around the world, people, individuals around the world joined hands in hands in a particular cause for so long a period. It had never happened before on that greater scale. That people were talking about the problem of South Africa in their own parliaments. I mean, if we look at our own parliament, we don't generally discuss the issues of other countries. We don't even discuss Lesotho. We don't talk about Swaziland in our parliament. Imagine a country, a first world country, talking about a country far away in Africa, deep dark Africa, the jungle Africa. Talking about a name that essentially was a terrorist, Mandela, free Mandela. I don't know, can you imagine? Like, I don't know how it would come to be if we had to start a, you know, let Al-Qaeda go campaign. That's a parallel. Mandela was a terrorist, arrested and sentenced for terrorism. And when he stood trial, when he spoke from the dock, gave a statement in his own defense at the Rivonia treason trial, he and his colleagues decided they were putting the system of apartheid in the dock. And the world watched and reported on this. Years later, people don't even know what Mandela looks like. And they're celebrating him at Wembley Stadium, packed to capacity. Thousands of young Britons, whilst Margaret Thatcher, their leader, still maintains that this man is a terrorist. It's the audacity of youth, it's the audacity of hope that gave so much impetus to the anti-apartheid movement and the anti-apartheid struggle in this country. It's young people all over the world saying, it doesn't matter what my leaders in government are saying. I have a view about this situation. It doesn't matter that I haven't even been to that country, just based on the information I've been given. What's happening in that country is wrong. If it was happening here, I'd want them to support my struggle. That's what young people all over the world did. And I remember when I was a kid, the apartheid struggle of South Africa was very much linked to the Palestinian struggle. Mandela also, when he came out, said the same thing. We are not free until Palestine is free. But to be honest, somewhere along the line, many of us as South African free people have forgotten this message. We've forgotten this historical linkage. You know, the reality about what's happening in Palestine is very similar to what happened here and the problems also that happened in Pakistan and India. There was a colonial power that ruled over the land. And when that colonial power decided it was exiting, the decisions it made led to the situation of bloodshed. We saw that when the colonial power left India, they split India into two countries, Pakistan and India, which have kept on fighting since then. They've been in a state of perpetual war. We saw that the manner in which the colonial administration administered here in South Africa have led us to also be in a perpetual race war, tribal war even. We've seen that the issue of Zimbabwe, the issue of the land, was compounded by the fact that when the colonial power left there, they said, we will settle out this land issue. And they did not, and consequently, look at where Zimbabwe is. I'm not saying everything everyone else has done is right, but these are legacy issues, and the same is with Palestine. I went to Israel and Palestine last year because I said to myself, I cannot talk on this issue without seeing it. I had grown up in a home that had a map of Palestine on the wall. Many years later, I realized that the map of Palestine that was on my grandmother's wall is actually the same map of Israel that's in the atlases now. It confused me. Wait, hang on, is Israel Palestine? No, it's not. But how come it's the same map? No, well, you see what happened was, when the colonial power left, they took this land and gave it to the Jewish people who said, this is now our home, it's Israel. So there's a context to this. When I went down the streets in Israel and I asked people who knew, very smart people, they said, well, you know, this issue goes back thousands of years. It goes back to Abraham. 3,000 years ago, we were here, we built this temple. You talk to Palestinians in Jerusalem, they say, no, well, we have a different take about this. And it's really weird, because people are contesting this thing on the basis of history. They're saying, no, I had the right to be here before you. You weren't here, well, I was here. No, we weren't actually here, but that's what this contestation is about when you hear it. But when I thought about it, I thought, this thing is more than who belongs where. We've had the same struggles in South Africa. Who does this land belong to? Whites, blacks, who? This thing is bigger than the issue of the land. This thing is fundamentally about human rights. It cannot be that big walls are built in the same country. People are searched, treated as if they are in a huge virtual concentration camp. Huge roads going in to this area in Ramallah are often then fenced off. Right? So think about it like this. Think about it like this. This is our country, this is our Johannesburg, we can all walk around. One day, they put up a big fence around this road here, or this tunnel. And they say, well, because the people who travel, some people who travel on this tunnel fear for their lives all the time. Big barbed wires are put up all around the tunnel, just so that those people who fear for their lives, who live in the reses here, are said that they are protected. For neither the Israelis nor the Palestinians does this make any kind of sense. And us as South Africans, beyond the historical duty, we have a human duty. Now I've got many Jewish friends who, even when I posted about it on my Facebook, we get into debates. No, but you cannot compare what happened in apartheid with what's happening in Israel today. They'll say, no, but actually what's happening in the Middle East is all of these Arab countries don't want Israel to exist. Therefore, any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. It reminds us of what Hitler was doing. They want to wipe us out. Does that not sound like the Swat Khafar talk of the Afrikaners? Afrikaners saying this is our land, we're Afrikaners, it's our father's land, and if we allow black people to have the same rights as us, they will drive us to the sea, they will wipe us out, rape our women, and we shall be extinct. Doesn't it sound the same? But ask yourselves, in the 20 years, has anything bad happened to the Afrikaners in South Africa? Has anything bad happened to the Afrikaner nation? Has Afrikaners become extinct? Have Afrikaners lost their lands and their money? Some people believe that freedom of one group means the automatic enslavement of another. I'm here so that to tell you that when you engage on the issue of Israel and Palestine, we realize that it's not a all or nothing, a zero-sum game discussion. It's not that because we want the Palestinians to be free, therefore we are anti-Semitic, that we are like Hitler. It's not that because we want the Palestinians to enjoy the freedom of movement in a land in which they were born, that suddenly we want to wipe out a tribe from the earth. And it's not for Israel and the Palestinians to almost take equal responsibility for what's happening. The entity with the most power has to assume more responsibility for the situation. That's the reality. So this Israel Apartheid Weeks are about us reminding Israel, being the conscience of Israel, pushing Israel into a position just like the world did with the apartheid government in South Africa. When the apartheid government in South Africa finally went to the table to have negotiations, guess what? They had 1.5 million South African young people that had been trained to be soldiers, that had access to weaponry. All of the ANC and the PAC guerrilla fighters combined were not even 100,000. If it had come to a full civil war, I can tell you that many of us would be wiped out. Our parents would have been wiped out. But it did not get there, even though the South African government had more might, military might. They were convinced, because the world started to say, we are going to stop doing business with you. This will hurt your pocket. We will not let you participate in sporting activities with us. So Sun City could not attract international artists to come and perform there. Those guys would not have done that without a global consciousness that started through little meetings like this, little gatherings, rallies, posters. This year, this whole week, is not an end in of itself. It is the catalyst to a global movement to push Israel to be responsible and take accountability in its dealings with the Palestinians. It is the catalyst of a move to get the whole world, from Europe to Asia to Africa, saying to Israel, you will be isolated, and it will not be anti-Semitism that does it to you. It will be your own actions. You will be isolated until you do right by the Palestinians, the same people that have equal claim to the same land that you claim. That's what this is. This, even though it's in its 10th year, is just the start. In the next 10 years, Palestine had better be free, or else this entire university should be having these kind of talks. This room should be full, and the next room, and the next room. The streets should be full, saying, divest. Stop buying Israeli products, even if they're good. Don't buy it. Don't buy those computer chips. Don't buy those guns. Don't buy those tomatoes. And don't buy those creams in the mall. You know those will always stop you. These Lamer creams. They tell you, oh, no, comes from the Dead Sea. Oh. Don't buy those things. Rather use salt in your own house. Salt and water. A bit of sand. I can give you the sand from my township. When the Israeli people feel it, and they understand this is not about their race, it's not about their religion, this is about equal human rights for the Palestinians. It's about dignity. It's about the right that people have to protest and not have paramilitary forces barge into their houses, kidnap them, take them off, and say, well, they were terrorists. Even as they have been elected by their own people, constituents, to represent them in their own parliaments. It cannot be like that because we in South Africa have a problem with our neighbor that we suddenly send, armed forces to go into that country, pull out their MPs, and have mock trials, throw them in jail and say, well, we have the right to do this because we're simply defending our rights, we're simply defending our right to our existence. Your right to an existence cannot impugn on the right of the existence of others. If your freedom infringes on my freedom, that's not freedom, it's tyranny. And that's what happened even in Nazi Germany. The German people felt their freedom and their rights were more important than everybody else's. And the rest of the world watched. And today, we understand that that kind of situation is intolerable. We cannot watch when a tyrant runs around annexing land, throwing people in concentration camp, throwing people in prison because they feel they have a right to a greater freedom than them. And it cannot be that because something bad happened to you, it legitimizes you doing bad to somebody else. The Boers in this country cannot say, because the English threw them in concentration camp, it was right for them to have apartheid in this land. So similarly, it is not right what the Israeli government and what the Israeli people that elect this government are doing. But I see shifts. Last year, they had an election, and between the right and the left-hand side in Israel, there was a deadlock. They had an equal number of votes. The Israelis themselves, as the people, are starting to say they are heartful of this. It is our duty now to reach out to those Israelis. Partner with those Israelis that believe in the freedom of the Palestinians and make this not a racial project, but the human rights project that we all know it is. We in the African National Congress Youth League support Israel Apartheid Week because it recalls the struggles of our land, the struggles of our people, and the struggles that the founding fathers of the ANC Youth League endured. All the years that Madiba spent in jail, like your father, he was an inspiration to many generations. We know similarly, Marwan is going to be an inspiration to many generations here and across the world who will say no, will not support tyranny. That's one, no matter how we couch it. And when your father is free, it will just be the beginning. Because once he's free, it'll still be a few steps before your people are truly free. So he too will be a symbol for the freedom of the Palestinians. And of course the Israelis will be free from the situation they find themselves in. So we wish to say to you, we support your struggle. And wherever we go henceforth, we shall remind people outside and within South Africa of what Madiba said. South Africa is not free until Palestine is free. South Africa